Okay, so step 5, writing copy that speaks to your audience. So I wanted to show you what I did in my business when I decided to tackle a local market segment, local businesses. So just to reiterate what I told you earlier, in 2007 I started MPT, Melbourne Private Tours, where we focus specifically on really high-end, unique, experiential private tours, predominantly to international markets, so the USA, a lot of European markets, the UK, Singapore, Hong Kong, and a few others were really important ones to us. And then in around 2011, I launched MPT Corporate Events. So as I've told you, this was a really effective pivot for me, and I pretty quickly grew MPT Corporate Events to around 400,000 in revenue, and at the rate it was going, if I was still running that business today, if I hadn't sold it 3 years ago, it would definitely be doing $1 million plus annually. So it was a really good pivot and a pretty handy extra revenue stream. So even though some of the experiences that we offered for MPT, Melbourne Private Tours, and MPT Corporate Events were very, very similar, the copy that I wrote looked very, very different, and it all started with the research phase and the outreach process to the decision makers in the local businesses that we were targeting. So when we reached out to the executive assistants or the business owners or the sales and marketing managers for these local businesses, we found a lot of really interesting information. Some of the key stuff is here. The challenges and frustrations that they had were things like this. It was really hard to please everyone when they were organising them. They didn't have time to organise these events. It actually wasn't their core role. They had a whole heap of other really important stuff to do, and this responsibility had been dumped on them as like an extra thing they had to do. And it was a really big responsibility, so it kind of stressed them out a little bit. There was always a lot of stress with the suppliers they were using. They hadn't had a lot of experience with them, and they were worried that they wouldn't be the quality that they wanted to, and everything was going to reflect on that decision maker. The boss wanted an outcome. The boss kind of wrote, like if it was the executive assistant or the PA or the marketing manager or the HR that were organising these, they found that there was a lot of pressure from the boss because they wanted a really great experience, and they wanted some kind of outcome was one of the things that came through. And a lot of them really wanted like a challenge element, a team building element. They wanted like a learning outcome or something that they could take out of the event. And then things like this, it was really important that they felt like the staff appreciated them, so they had to put some really, some thought and consideration into them. It was really important to the boss and to the staff that they were seen to put a lot of time and a lot of effort into these because they wanted really strong attendance. They wanted people to come along. They wanted people to actually really want to be there and be grateful for these type of events. And the other thing that shone through was that it was hard to find really great ideas, really quality events that didn't blow the budget. And another thing that was really interesting was that a lot of these businesses that did client engagement events, well, they were spending a lot more money on these client engagement events, but they wanted so much more for their money. They wanted so much bang for buck. They wanted wow experiences, some really exclusive type of things that they just couldn't get elsewhere. And they wanted to run events that would top other kind of events that a lot of these people they were inviting had done with other companies. There was a lot of pressure to be the best when they were talking about running client engagement events. So this kind of information was obviously gold to us, and it allowed us to really recreate the offerings we had and create things that spoke directly to these decision makers and said, oh wow, yes, that's exactly what I need. It's like these guys are talking to us. Okay, so to give you an example, here is some of the marketing collateral from Melbourne Private Tours. This is like a trade brochure that we created. So we offer 2 different types of experiences. We had what we called our luxurious day tours, which was our kind of entry-level range of private tours. And then if we jump down here, we had what we call our collection of unforgettable journeys. So these were a bit of a level above our luxurious day tours. These were one-off, immersive, unique travel experiences, unlike any other, and as I say, a bit of another level above our luxurious day tours. But there was, some of the things that shone through. This is a really good example to use, our Melbourne After Dark experience. We had about 15 or 20 of our, what we called our collection of unforgettable journeys, but our Melbourne After Dark experience. Now, some of the language that we used to promote this trip, bearing in mind the market, our target market was the US market. We first of all focused a lot on the destination itself and what Melbourne was renowned for. So, join us as the sun comes down, the lights go on, be mesmerised by some of our heritage buildings. For dinner, soak up the atmosphere in one of Melbourne's hottest dining spots. Melbourne is the renowned culinary heartbeat of Australia. So it really touched on all the points that people were coming to Melbourne for. They were coming for the food scene. Melbourne was renowned as the cultural heartbeat and the culinary heartbeat of Australia. So the type of copy that we wrote focused on these kind of aspects and all the things that people had heard about Melbourne and loved about Melbourne. And then in the highlights again, we really focused in on, some of the things that people would come to Melbourne for. So hidden bars, cocktails in little hidden bars. But if we contrast this with the promotional materials, the marketing collateral that we created for MPT corporate events. So this is what we called I guess you could call it our experiences menu, inspiration for your next corporate event. Be a part of something different. So we focus on our key offerings in the summary, and then if we get to some of the actual experience types, so we categorize them very differently. Not rather than by region, we categorize them in a way that would speak to the corporate market. So team fun on a shoestring, really affordable fun events, team out and about, getting the team out of the office for team building experiences, eat and drink, focusing on those food and wine. High end, knowing that our local businesses that had a corporate entertainer or client engagement type program would be really interested in these high end events. So that was the way that we categorized them. And I've just showed you that Melbourne After Dark experience, but if we take a look, for example, at a similar type of experience, cocktail, masterclass, and bar tour. So the actual experience itself is very, very similar to that Melbourne After Dark experience that I mentioned. I'll just make that a little wider there. And the key differences are that we didn't focus so much on the destination, but we focused more on the outcome and things like this. Hidden bars in hard to find places, tucked away in laneways, even on noodle shop roofs, including expertly crafted cocktails. You'll even have a chance to create your own masterpiece and see if you can muddle and mix with the best of them. Join your cocktail expert on tour for the very best of Melbourne. So we're focusing on the things that people wanted. They wanted to actually roll their sleeves up and get involved and do something. They wanted to be led by a local expert. They wanted to uncover things that as a local they didn't know about or hadn't been able to find previously. So the way that we actually wrote our copy to speak to the local the local corporate market or local businesses was very, very different for something that was actually a very, very similar type of experience. And here's another example. In our luxurious day tours, we had all the way down here our Yarra Valley experience. So this was something that really appealed to our international visitors. Talking about distances, a short drive. So obviously people who live in Melbourne are very much aware of the fact it's a short drive. Ideal destination as a day trip. So again, focusing on information that was really useful, really important to an international visitor. And again, really setting the scene, a picturesque backdrop of the Yarra Ranges, well-renowned restaurants. It's everything that an international visitor kind of wanted to see, included in the copy and included in an itinerary. So this was geared wholly and solely towards our international visitors. In the highlights there again, talking about things that would really resonate, a range of wine tastings in boutique wineries, so they wanted to know that they're actually going to be able to see basically see as much as possible in the time allowed. But if we go back to our corporate menu, we'll see this, our Yarra Valley Assistant Winemaker experience. So talking about things like this, an exclusive opportunity to get your hands dirty during vintage alongside an acclaimed Oak Ridge winemaking team. Hits all the language that a local business would love to see. First-hand secrets of their winemaker, David Bignell. Just gold. Like, this is, from our research, this is exactly the kind of thing that would make an executive assistant say, oh my God, yes, that's exactly what we're after for event A, event B, or event C. And when we talk about the dining element, of course, really important that there's great food and wine involved. So the copy changes a little bit. We talk about the chef that's actually preparing the meal. And look, many locals may have actually heard of this chef. They may have read about him in restaurant reviews. So it's probably not something relevant to an international audience, but absolutely relevant to the local market, local corporate market. So that was the way that we really sort of tweaked the experience. And it was, the two experiences are very similar. We had a real focus. A lot of the day was spent at one winery, Oak Ridge, and a lot of the activities were very, very similar. But the way that it was presented, the way the copy was written, made it sound like a completely different experience. So just again, running through a few other of those corporate experiences, things like our taste masterclass in flavor. So things like masterclasses or challenges, things that have a challenge element, hands-on. All of these kind of key trigger words were really important to include in our copy, and this language came straight out of the surveys that we'd done for local businesses. And just to let you know that you'll find both that Melbourne Private Tours trade brochure and that MPT corporate events experience menu over in the resource section, so you can see firsthand at how the copy differed between two relatively similar types of experiences.